Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manoj Agarwal, and today we'll be talking with Peter Voss. So Peter is joining us today, and he's a pioneer in AI who coined the term artificial general intelligence, and he's the CEO and chief scientist at IGO.ai. For the past 15 years, Peter and his team at IGO have been perfecting an industry disruptive, highly intelligent and hyper personalized chatbot with a brain for large enterprise customers. Welcome, Peter. I know your history and your resume is much longer than the short bio that I just shared. So I would love to get into that a little bit and learn more about your journey. And you're one of the pioneers in AI. So looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, well, thank you. Yes, certainly I can give a little bit of background on how I got to be working on artificial general intelligence. So I started out as an electronics engineer, started my own electronics company doing industrial electronics. And then I fell in love with software, and my company turned into a software company. So I developed a comprehensive ERP package for small to medium sized businesses, and that business turned out to be quite successful. We went from the garage to 400 people and did an IPO. So that was
Wow.
really exciting times. And it's when I exited that company, um, it occurred to me, well, what big project do I want to tackle next? I had, a lot of time on my hands to sort of think about things. And what occurred to me is that software really is quite dumb. Software doesn't have common sense. It doesn't learn. It doesn't reason. So how can we fix that? Um, and so I took off 5 years to study all different aspects of intelligence, starting with epistemology, the theory of knowledge. How do we know anything? What is reality? How can we be certain of things? And to really deeply understand how humans think, how we learn, how we reason, and so on. I also studied how child development, how our intelligence differs from animals, what IQ tests measure, and of course all the work that had been done in the field of AI already. So the culmination of the 5 years of research and study and thinking about this, I came up with a design for a thinking machine.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is really what led to me then coining the term artificial general intelligence with two other people.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of talk about AI. A lot of people are a little bit scared of this technology, and there are obviously concerns about job loss. There are concerns about AI taking over. And interestingly enough, I've been working with AI myself for about 15 years, and interestingly enough, like most people think it's a very new technology. Can you let's so there were multiple statements there. So first of all, can you help us understand the history of AI itself? Like how long has this been around? Is this a recent phenomena, or please shed some light on this.
Yes, certainly. And I think that is very important to understand the history and the different sort of types of AI or things that are called AI. Now, the term AI was coined almost 70 years ago, a long time ago. And the idea originally was to build thinking machines, to build machines that can think, learn, and reason the way humans do. And in fact, the original founders of this field thought they could crack this problem within a few years.
Mhm.
And of course, that turned out to be hyper optimistic. It turned out to be much harder to actually build thinking machines. So what happened over the decades is the field of AI really shifted focus completely away from building general thinking machines to what one could best describe as narrow AI. And so how that worked, basically what the field of AI has been involved with for the last 6 decades, is to pick a particular problem And then really the ingenuity of the engineer or the data scientist solves the problem. So to give you an example here, in the late 90s, IBM came up with Deep Blue, the world chess champion. And it's not that the computer itself, that the program itself had the intelligence how to figure that out. It was the ingenuity of the engineers to write programs and to use specific tools to optimize hardware and various ways of figuring out how to play a good game of chess. So it's really very, very different from building a machine that has the intelligence how to figure out how to learn chess, as opposed to a human designing very specific software to do that. And that program is a world chess champion, can't even play checkers. It can't
Yeah, yeah.
learn anything. So it doesn't have any kind of general intelligence. So the field of AI really has been suffering from being focused on narrow AI. Now, there are good reasons for that, because when you tackle one problem at a time, like container optimization or traffic optimization or some specific medical diagnosis, you can use AI techniques or computer science techniques and solve that one particular problem. So you can get a product to market, you can make money, and you can achieve some results, but it's not what the original idea of AI was. So in 2001, when I had finished my research and I was ready to actually start building the thinking machine, I got together with some other people who had similar ideas to get back to the original vision of AI, to build thinking machines. And we decided to write a book together. And we were considering the book title, basically, what should we call this? And we said, well, we really need to get, this is not AI that everybody else is doing. It's not narrow AI. So we came up with the artificial general intelligence, which says the intelligence needs to be able to learn really almost anything, well, certainly anything that a human can learn to do by itself, largely. And also the G in AGI does correlate with what psychologists use in IQ tests. So little g is sort of a symbol for general intelligence in humans. So I think that fit in quite nicely. So we coined the term and wrote the book. It took a few years for that to get published. And then since 2002, I've basically been working alternatively working on developing the core technology, so basically being in an R&D type of mode, and then commercializing it. So my current company, igo.ai, developed the technology for over like a 5-year period, and then over the last 4 years we've really been focused on commercializing this in the call center space, and I can talk more about that. But more recently, a few months ago, we actually restarted a very focused effort on taking the technology, increasing the IQ and taking it to the next level, basically to develop the next generation of this that will, we expect it to take us pretty much to human level understanding, but in a very general way. So the original vision and dream of AI.
Excellent. Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, one question, I'm a avid meditator, and I take a lot of interest in neuroscience and just understanding human consciousness. So there is a specific sort of difference what I understand about what intelligence is and what human consciousness is. So in your journey, in your opinion, how are they different? How do you think machines will be able to capture the intelligence, which is the logic, or also the actual consciousness of humans, like things like creativity, things like feelings, things like emotions?
Yes, this is a very interesting question, and I actually spent quite a lot of time sort of in the area of philosophy and trying to understand what free will is, and will a machine have free will, and what consciousness is. So I have actually spent a lot of time thinking about that and discussing it. So the intelligence, of course, will be different in an AI. So when we talk about having human level and human like intelligence, um, it the idea is that it can solve problems and do research and think about things the way humans do when they're in a scientific kind of mode. Um, to really deeply understand, to reason about things. Now, that still involves intuition. And intuition really is just something where you have a lot of information already, a lot of experience, a lot of information, and without necessarily thinking explicitly how you come to a conclusion, you just have an intuition, you have the experience that leads you to an answer. And an AI can do that. In fact, generative AI, ChatGPT, and that really work very much on an intuitive level. They don't work on a high level reasoning. They don't know what they're talking about. It's more like, what are the patterns that have been stored and that are in the model, and it will sort of, and that's why it also confabulates. I mean, intuition can be very wrong. You can have an intuition about somebody that turns out to be very wrong, but it's basically based on all of the experience that you have. So an AI will have both intuition, but also this higher level reasoning ability, or what Daniel Kahneman calls system two thinking. That's thinking about thinking, so that you really are aware of it, which is a really, really important component of general intelligence. IQ test measures show that people with a high IQ have very good metacognition. So they kind of can think about what they're saying and kind of analyze and say, does it make sense? Am I, and so on. So in terms of consciousness and emotions, an AI, an AGI at human level will be conscious. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And the reason for that is, if you think about consciousness as self-awareness, that you are aware of being an agent in the real world, making things happen. An AGI absolutely has to have that awareness. It has to take into account that, hey, I am now doing something in the world that'll have an effect, as opposed to somebody else doing something. I clicked on this website as opposed to somebody else clicked on it. So it has to have an awareness of its own agency in the world. So in that sense, it absolutely has to be conscious in order to be intelligent and operate in the world. But there's, of course, the sort of phenomenal consciousness, the awareness on how it feels for us to be conscious. And that's going to be very, very different and really not comparable in an AI, because for us, it's, our heartbeat, our our stomach, are we sweating? It's the whole physiology that is part and parcel of how we experience the world, that part of consciousness. And that'll be just very, very different, because it's not going to have a body, it's not going to have a heartbeat, it's not going to be sweating. It's, I mean, unless we specifically build something like that, and there's really no point in doing that. So it will have to be conscious, but it'll be a very different kind of self or consciousness, self-awareness. Yeah, I can talk more about emotions and things if you want, or maybe you want to ask.
Yeah, I mean, let's spend a little bit time on this, because from what I see, emotions have such an infinite range of, like, yeah, we have IQ test because we can sort of wrap our heads around something like that and say, okay, this person, relatively speaking, is this much, this intelligent. But there is no such thing as an emotional test so far. Like, even psychologists, psychiatrists, they sort of try to feel their way through when they are talking to a patient about a situation. So coming from the eastern world, for thousands and thousands of years, humans have been trying to answer this question about themselves. What is consciousness itself? Because even that has been a mystery. And so what I would love to sort of go deeper in this a little bit with you. What, when you say it will be conscious, like, in what sense that we will be able to say, now at this point this is conscious?
Yes, well, it's not a binary thing. It's not that. I mean, even in humans, people say they have a greater awareness of things. And or they're not. They kind of just stumble through the world. As to they are very acutely aware of what other people are saying and thinking, or what's happening in their world, or even the colors and smells, and So
Yeah.
there clearly are levels of consciousness or levels of awareness, and AI is what is it aware of? What is it taking into account? That in the world. So as I say, it absolutely has to be aware of itself. It has to have that self concept. So if you think about consciousness as awareness, self awareness, then it absolutely has to have that. But as I say, for us, there are all of these emotional components and the bodily components that play a part in that, and AI, will not have that, at least nothing
Mhm.
like humans. So when we talk about emotions as such, um, there, I think there's a useful distinction to be made between what I would call cognitive emotions and survival emotions, let's call them that, or
Mhm.
reptile brain emotions. So cognitive emotions are things like confusion, certainty, boredom, and things of that nature. Now, an AI and AGI has to have those. It has to know. It has to have some kind of a sense of how certain am I to about this conclusion.
Mhm.
If it's bored, um, if it's basically just doing the same thing over and over again, it's not getting anywhere. It's okay.
Mhm.
Maybe I need to explore a little bit more, or maybe this is a task that requires, it's just a boring task that I need to
Mhm.
do. So to be aware of that. So there are these cognitive emotions of surprise, certainty, boredom, and so on, that are really required for cognition to work, for thinking and learning and reasoning to happen. But then there are other emotions that are much deeper in humans, that are animal level emotions of survival and reproduction. This
Mhm.
would be, love and hatred and jealousy,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
fear, and anger, and so on. And there really is no reason why you would want to put those into
Mhm.
an AI to have them. Now, there's a difference between an AI being able to recognize those emotions in a human. It's very important that they can recognize them, but not that they will have it themselves and feel it themselves. So it's a bit like, think of it as like a psychologist. If with a psychologist, they can recognize your emotions, but you don't want them to feel them
Mhm.
themselves. If they recognize that you're angry, you don't also want them to feel anger. That
Yeah.
you want them to stay objective and detached. And
Mhm.
so an AI really is going to be operating in that mode. It won't be feeling the emotions, but it'll be able to understand them and be able to help guide you through, as a good psychologist
Yeah.
might do. Now, you also mentioned creativity, and typically over the decades, people always felt, that, okay, maybe AIs will be able to reason, well, like Spock, and, follow a
Mhm.
rational path, but they'll never
Mhm.
have the creativity of humans. Well, surprise, surprise, as it turned out, we've actually had the creativity before we've had the reasoning. I mean,
Mhm.
we now have these generative models, and we've had them for quite a few years, that can dream and make up stuff and create new things. Now, of course, there's a debate on how much of that creativity is within the confines of what they've already seen. But you could actually tweak these models to kind of hallucinate really wildly, and produce things
Mhm.
that were never in their training set.
Mhm.
So as it turns out, to be creative is actually somewhat easy, relatively easy now
Mhm.
in AI. Now, the quality of that creativity, that's another question. Are you talking about
Yeah.
artistic creativity, and is that something we would appreciate, think is, good art, and on what basis would we say it's good art? Just because it's different, or we don't like it because we're not used to it. But if we're talking about creativity in scientific fields and so on, I think we're already beginning to see that they can be creative, because they can just tirelessly explore different ideas, or different connections, I should say,
Mhm.
and come up with different combinations, and once they have really good thinking ability, which we don't really have yet in AI, they'll be able to validate those explorations much better. But that's where we're going, is to get to AGI, and certainly I want to talk about
Yeah.
what I think is needed for us to get to that, to get to the
Yeah.
original dream, to get to AGI.
Yeah. No, these are very interesting points. And I really want to pick on that distinction that you made, interesting distinction, which is like the cognitive emotions and the animal emotions. And I believe there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of misinformation about AI. But the main fear, I believe, is coming from this notion that AI will primarily have these animal emotions like jealousy and ambition, and Hollywood depiction of AI like Terminator has made it worse. I think general public is afraid of that, meaning AI taking over because it is jealous, it is very ambitious, and wants to eliminate any competition. So, can you help us understand that aspect of, you said that it won't have those emotions, but uh, uh, let's try to like bring it to the real world now in the current situation. How can we address this fear that general public has about this?
I think you put your finger right on it. It's basically Hollywood depiction of, they're always the bad AI. I
Mm.
was once asked to, as a consultant on an AI film, and I gave them some feedback of things that were plausible or not plausible, and so on, and that was all good. But then I said, why can't you have a story that where the AI and humans actually, where it's a happy ending, and there was
Mm.
just no interest in that. I guess that's not going to make any money, because that to me seemed a much more a rational outcome and likely outcome in the real world. It's exactly, people can only think of AIs in terms of how humans behave. And
Mm, yeah,
they
yeah.
think, well, if an AI is so incredibly powerful, it can think so well, it has access to all the information in the world, surely it's going to abuse the power. That it has more power, it's going to abuse the power. But there really
Yeah.
is no reason to believe that. I mean, the AIs we are building, or really AIs that are being built, are built to serve us, to do work for us.
Mm.
That's the reason they are there. There isn't that genetic drive, there isn't that reptile brain to say, I've got to survive and reproduce, and the ego, and being, I mean, survival, and males, testosterone and all of that. You're simply not going to have that. There's no reason to have it. Why would anybody want to build an AI to do that? Um, so I think it's very unfortunate that there is a sort of fear of AI wanting to take over the world. There really is very little reason to believe that that's going to be the situation.
Okay, okay. So I want to come back to the question that you posed, like what will it take to build the AGI? But before that, just one more thing is another major fear is that AI is going to take away our jobs, and there won't be any work available
Mhm.
to do and whatnot. So can you address that for a minute?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I'd like to turn that on its head. Um, if you ask people, would they like to win the lottery? I mean,
Mhm.
you ask anybody, and has anybody ever said no? Well, maybe some billionaire guy would say, "No,
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
need to win the
yeah,
lottery."
yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to win the lottery. Everybody wants to not have to work,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and that's what the promise of AGI is, that there'll be radical abundance, that the cost of goods and services will go down so much, and it'll help us solve so many of the technological problems that we have, bringing dramatically reducing the cost of batteries, energy, healthcare. I mean, you name it, it will just improve life in so many different ways. Now, will there need to be some kind of a universal basic income, or somebody actually said not universal basic income, but universal generous income, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I forget what term they use, but I thought
yeah.
that was quite a good one. But
Mhm.
I see AGI bringing along radical abundance. Now, of course, it will be, a lot of people want to win the lottery, and when they do, they can't cope with it.
Yeah,
That maybe too much of their identity is tied to the work that they do,
yeah,
their ego, their self-worth, or whatever. But again, we will have AGIs that will help us through that. It'll help coach us through that. That you have your own personal psychologist that can
yeah,
help you and say, well, what are the things that interest you in life that you can now pursue, that you don't
yeah,
have to work anymore?
yeah,
Or people might work 10 hours a week, or something, to the things where you want human interaction, like probably in education and psychology and helping people. And of course, there are billions of people in the world that still need to be uplifted, that need help. If you look
Mhm,
look
mhm.
across all the poorer countries in the world, I think a lot of people will say, yes, that's where I want to. That's where I
Yeah.
want to spend my time, and
Mhm,
because I
mhm,
have the freedom to do it. So
mhm,
I see this exactly turned on its head.
mhm.
The fear of not having a job is
Yeah,
that you don't have to have one.
yeah, yeah. I completely share your sentiment, but it's kind of a huge leap of faith for people to sort of imagine that kind of world right now. But I think that is coming. Let's turn back to your question. So, what does it take to build an AGI?
Yes, so DARPA actually, a few years ago, they came up with a model where they talk about the three waves of AI. And the first wave is really the first several decades of AI. And those were sort of logic-based system, expert systems, you know, really fundamentally sort of built on mathematics, logic, and so on. And that now most people call that good old-fashioned AI.
Mhm,
That was the mainstream. So again, Deep Blue, the world chess champion, would be an example of that. Um, and now the second wave hit like a tsunami just about 12 years ago or so. And that's all about deep learning, machine learning, generative AI, or statistical AI, where you
mhm,
basically say, I have a lot of data, I have a lot of computing power. What can I do with that? And of course, we now have, companies like Google and Amazon, um, and that have a lot of data, have a lot of computing power. So they basically, that's the hammer they've got. So everything looks like a nail, and they've made tremendous progress in that field. I mean, statistical AI has really had a phenomenal run. And last year with ChatGPT, or the year before, being launched, it's phenomenal what has been achieved by having trillions of pieces of information that are force fed into a model that you build. So that's phenomenal. But that's the second wave of AI, according to DARPA, and I would agree with that. The third wave of AI really starts with, what does intelligence require? What is important in human level intelligence? And to build basically cognitive systems, or that's called cognitive AI. And we haven't really transitioned into the cognitive AI era. I mean, my company has been doing it for the last 20 years, but we're very much an outlier. We didn't get sucked into the statistical AI because we saw early on that statistical AI will not get us to AGI. And there
mhm,
is a general consensus, uh, uh, when you talk to the scientists, there's pretty much a consensus that statistical and generative AI will not get us to AGI. Now, when you talk about the hype and the marketing and so on, of course, everybody's talking, oh, give us another 10 billion or 100 billion,
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
we'll get you to AGI, but
Mhm,
it really makes no sense. And
mhm,
let me give you a few reasons for that. So important important aspects of intelligence, human intelligence, are that we learn in real time, and we don't just it's not just imprinted on us what we learn. For example, if you read an article, you're having a conversation, or you read a scientific paper or something, you read a sentence or you hear a sentence in a conversation, and immediately you digest this in some way. You say, does this confirm something I know already? Does it contradict something? Does it remind me of something else? So we have this active process of integrating information, and then we might say, hang on, I should be thinking about this to clarify my thoughts. This is a contradiction. Or I should be reading something else, or I should be asking a follow-up question. I mean, very much the
Yeah,
conversation
yeah,
we're having
yeah,
now.
yeah.
So we have this proactive interaction in learning, and that learning has to happen in real time. We don't just scan through a whole PDF and then we have the information. It doesn't work that way. And part of the reason for that is we need to conceptualize it. So we need to generalize what we hear, and we need to fit in with, do we need to update our generalization? If we have a particular generalization, is there some exception that we have, or is there some other angle that we need to learn? So we have this proactive learning element that's really important in real time. And LLMs simply do not have that. And they cannot have it because, I mean, even if you look at the word GPT, it already tells you the story. G is generative. It makes up stuff. And that's, of course, a huge problem, the lack of reliability. And where does it make up stuff from? Well, it is trained on trillions of pieces of information, good, bad, and ugly. Because it got information from Twitter and Facebook and good, bad, and ugly. And that's force-fed into a model, into a statistical model. And then when you ask a question, it basically has to just pick out some patterns from that, which may contain, some of that bad or ugly information. So generative, the G, is inherently a problem that you have. The P means it's pre-trained, which means it cannot learn in real time. And that's very much inherent. So imagine hiring a personal assistant, a human for you, and they come and say, "Oh, I can do QuickBooks, and I can do Excel, and and so on." Great, okay. And then you tell the assistant, "Well, we're introducing a new product here. We closed down one of our branches. We have a new business relationship here," and next day your assistant comes in and they don't remember any of that, or they didn't integrate it with the implications that has, that, oh, you closed a branch, okay, what are the implications, and or you have a new product or whatever. So being pre-trained is, basically invalidates what we require of intelligence. And then the T, transformer, that's a core technology that's used, inherently is backpropagation or gradient descent, which means it can only be trained in bulk, offline. And for ChatGPT, that means $100 million and many weeks or months of training. So that's not the kind of intelligence we ultimately need. So the cognitive AI approach, the third wave of AI that we have, we can learn incrementally, which also means our training costs are trivial, a tiny percentage, because we don't have to throw a trillion pieces of information at it. We can literally train it with one sentence at a time and give it as much information as it needs to do a particular job. And of course, it learns in real time, it reasons, it has metacognition, so it's aware of what it's doing. That's the cognitive AI approach, is where your starting point is, what does real intelligence require? And then to build a system that meets those requirements.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that in-depth answer. Now coming back to you and your life, having achieved so much, I always ask this question: what kind of role mentors and coaches played in your life? Like, and maybe if you want to even like name anybody that has had a huge impact on your life, that'll be awesome.
I can't really single out, too many individuals, because there have been just many influences in my life and different things. I'm actually entirely self-taught. I didn't finish high school, so I learned a lot by working with smart people and also reading a lot. I've always enjoyed reading, so I've read a lot of fantastic books, but I think if I started listing names, I would probably feel bad about leaving out
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
some important ones. So yeah, really I can't single out.
I think books are also great mentors.
Yes, and of course now that has changed. I mean, I still, if it's a difficult subject, I have to have that piece of paper in front of me.
Yeah,
Even a computer screen won't do it. That of course decades of learning that way. It's just
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
puts me in the right mode to really
Mm.
think things through properly.
Awesome. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they want to follow your work, or they want to collaborate with you? What is the best way to get in touch with you?
Yes, well, certainly I do want to mention, our commercial side of the business,
Yes,
where
yes.
we very, very effectively replace call center agents, and that's the main business that we do. So the company has the two branches. The one is the commercial business, and the other one is our development. On the commercial side, we are always looking for new customers. One of our big customers is 1-800-Flowers group of companies, Harry and David,
Mm.
and of course they have Valentine's Day coming up right now
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we're in the middle of, and they used to have to hire several thousand extra people for that. And with our technology, we handle 90% of the customer service on chat, which has saved them thousands of having to hire thousands of people. And
mm,
the customer gets better support because they don't have
mhm.
to wait. They get very accurate information. So, that's on the commercial side. And on the development side, we are currently looking to raise more money to significantly expand our development team so that we can get to human level AI as soon as possible. So anybody who wants to reach me, very easy to find. Peter Voss at IGO AI. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, website, and I'd love to hear from people who have questions, ideas, who want to collaborate with us.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the very good questions. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.